For the last World Chess Championship between Gukesh Domoraju and Ding Liren, I made a video saying that it would be absolutely impossible to predict the winner. That is, no matter how good or bad each player has been performing. By the way, in case you had forgotten, the betting odds for that World Chess Championship match, according to William Hill, was 81% in favor of Gukesh, meaning if you bet $1,000 on Ding winning, you'd get a payout of $4,000. So Ding was a major underdog for this event. But the World Championship match went until the literal final round, and it would have gone to tiebreaks if Ding hadn't made that blunder in the endgame in match 14. But it was still incredibly clear to me that the match would go like this, even though everyone thought that Gukesh would win by a landslide. And for the exact same reasons, I think it'll be the same when Gukesh takes on Sindarov in December of 2026. I thought it would be an interesting thing to cover in a video, just like I did for the 2024 World Championship, and I would love to hear your guys' opinions in the comments below as well. So let's get into it. There are a couple of comparisons that I do want to make first. First of all, in 2024, Ding Liren was the reigning champion. He was completely out of form and had been written off by most. Gukesh was an upcoming young grandmaster who had taken the world by storm. He had a record-breaking Olympiad and an unbelievable candidates. In 2026, Gukesh is now the reigning champion. He is completely out of form and has been written off by most. Sindarov is an upcoming young grandmaster who has taken the world by storm. He also had the best modern candidates tournament ever seen. The only difference that you can really argue is that Ding Liren had a lot more experience than Gukesh does now in defending that title because of their ages. Even so, this is countered by the fact that Ding's form was so much worse in the year after his World Championship win than Gukesh's is after his World Championship win. But why does this happen? How can a player be such a heavy favorite to win a World Championship match and it still goes to the 14th game or to tiebreaks? Well, it's just because of how the World Chess Championship has not adapted to modern classical chess. In the candidates and the World Chess Championship, because the stakes are so high nowadays, sponsors are willing to pay their grandmasters a lot more for their preparation teams. Just to drive home to anyone that doubts that, just like Gukesh's and Sindarov's preparation team for this World Chess Championship, this video would not be possible without our sponsor, ChessMind.ai.
Most courses obsess over memorizing hundreds of opening lines, but ChessMind is built around something different, understanding positions and not just remembering moves. The goal isn't just to know theory, it's to know what to do when theory runs out. That's why the courses on ChessMind only take around an hour to complete, because the priority isn't on memorization, it's positional understanding. For just $7 per month, you can unlock over 50 courses on ChessMind, plus access to their AI coach, personalized puzzles, and training videos hosted by Chilean Grandmaster Maurizio Flores. And with the link in the description, you guys can get 20% off your purchase too.
But back to the topic at hand, their sponsors, knowing that they're going to sponsor either a world champion or a potential world championship challenger, means they're going to offer a lot more to these players because they're going to make a lot more money. With this money, players can afford much larger preparation teams, which makes these kind of tournaments a battle of theory. When you have such huge preparation teams, the theory in these tournaments goes so deep that it removes so many variables from the game that actually separates the skill gap between these players. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's also impossible to monitor and therefore would be impossible to ban. In the candidates, I would argue it doesn't make a huge difference either. Every player does it, and you only play the same opponent twice. So because you play so many different opponents, the variables naturally increase. This is why we've still had candidates tournaments where players can kind of run away with it, which would lead you to believe that they are the player that deserves to be in the World Chess Championship, which I 100% agree with. However, when you play the same grandmaster 14 times in a row, it's completely different. One player is preparing lines with white to win the game, and the other is preparing lines with black to equalize. When you factor in that each player has 120 minutes to make their moves, with an extra 30 minutes on move 40, any time-related variables also disappear. Yes, you have to be an extremely talented player to actually hold your own in a World Championship match, but the reality is, any player within the top 10 could probably hold their own in a World Championship match. Because with the way that modern classical chess is played at the World Championship level, all of the variables that separate two players are removed. Barring holes in opening theory, which should happen in equal amounts to both players, assuming they both have equal preparation teams, the game is skipped essentially to the middle game. This means that every game is usually drawn until the middle game. Then, when someone eventually does get out of theory, they have 120 minutes on their clock and their opponent's clock to solve the position and reach the end of the game. They're not solving it blindly either. They know these positions very well, and it's all about being as precise as possible. Added on to this, the deeper you get into a World Championship match, the more likely you are to repeat opening lines. You'll go home and analyze the game that you've just played, and then later on in the tournament, tournament, your opponent might try that line again. All of these things add up until there is basically no variables that would actually separate the skill gap between these already two very comparable players. Which is exactly why post-Magnus Carlsen, the Nepo Ding game went the full 14 games, and so did the Gukesh Ding game. So what will happen in this World Chess Championship? Well, before we talk about that, it's also important to note that the World Chess Championship doesn't reward form. Unless a player specifically practices head-to-head matches like Hikaru versus Liang, their usual tournament form leading up to the championship match tends to mean very little. A 14-game head-to-head tournament is completely different to a normal Super Grandmaster tournament. I mean, let's look at the 2026 candidates, for example. In round 4, Sindarov beats Caruana and sets himself up nicely to win the whole tournament. This only sets himself up to win the tournament because Fabiano is now relying on external factors to catch up. Caruana knows Sindarov will set up for a draw in their next game, minimizing the chances of him being able to win. So, Caruana can only focus on his own games and hope that other players take points off Sindarov. This didn't happen, and Sindarov went on to have a record-breaking candidates. This is not to say that Caruana would have won the whole tournament if he did beat Sindarov in that first matchup, but I mention it because that dynamic is not possible in a World Championship format. If Caruana loses the first game to Sindarov in a 14-game head-to-head, Sindarov can't set up for 13 draws. He'll eventually crack and Fabiano will draw level. So in a tournament like the candidates, you have to rely on other results going your way, but in a World Championship match, that doesn't happen. So with all that being said, despite it looking like Sindarov is a much better player than Gukesh is, whilst that is true at a tournament level, it's anything from the case in a World Championship match. I expect the championship to again go the full length, either being decided in the 14th round or going to tiebreaks. This is all being proved in formats outside of the World Chess Championship as well. You constantly see very talented classical chess players being wiped off the board in Bullet, Blitz, and Rapid. I do believe that a great chess player should be consistently good across all time formats, but I would also understand if you don't see these things as real chess. But what if we go to something like Fischer Random? I mean, let's look at the Freestyle Chess GOAT Challenge in 2024. See how different the results are when certain variables are put back into the game. 30 minutes are shaved off from 120 minutes to 90 minutes, and the opening is added back in as a variable. The result? The two players considered the best in the world at the time reached the final in Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. Ding Liren and Gukesh Damaraju, the two 2024 World Chess Champions and challengers, were knocked out in the first round. That's again not to say that they didn't deserve to be where they ended up in classical chess, but it does go to show when you add in all of these variables that are inherently removed from World Chess Championships, the weaknesses of these players start to show up again. And that goes to show exactly why this World Championship will probably go the full length again. Classical chess nowadays has too much time and too much theory. This isn't so much of a problem in regular tournament play, but when it does come to head-to-head matches, it's a completely different story. It's unlikely that you run out of time because you have so much preparation from your preparation team. And you're unlikely to run out of theory because if you eventually do run out of theory, you have all of the time in the world to figure out the position. Of course, this is a very simple explanation of how World Chess Championships work nowadays. But I hope it does go to show why Sindarov versus Gukesh in December will be much closer than anyone can anticipate. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below though. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on this and if you think someone is just going to win by a landslide this year in comparison to other years. But apart from that, I hope I've explained myself well in this video and I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.